Maya Reyes never planned to become the kind of nurse people talked about. She just planned to show up, do her job, and take care of whoever needed her. That was all she had ever wanted to do. But life has a way of testing people, especially the ones who are trying to do something good. And Maya's test came in the most unexpected place, at the most unexpected time, in front of the most unexpected audience. She grew up in a small town in South Texas, where the houses were modest, the summers were long, and nobody had very much but everybody made do. Her father fixed cars in a garage behind the house. Her mother served lunch to school children 5 days a week. They were not rich people, but they were proud people, and they raised Maya the same way. Work hard, be honest, never make someone feel smaller than they are. Maya was the first person in her family to go to college. She was also the first to earn a degree, and the first to join the United States Navy as a nurse. When she received her commission and pinned on her insignia for the first time, her mother cried in the parking lot, and her father stood very still, with his jaw tight, because he did not want to cry in public. Maya saw it anyway. She always noticed things like that. She had requested Ward 7B at Bethesda Naval Medical Center because she wanted to serve the people who sacrificed the most. Ward 7B was the post-surgical recovery ward for the military's elite fighters, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, and Marine Raiders. Men who had been to places the public never heard about, done things that would never appear in any news report, and come back carrying injuries both seen and unseen. Maya thought that serving them would be an honor. What she did not expect was the cold shoulder she received the moment she walked through the door. The ward had a certain energy to it, quiet, but watchful, like a room full of people who were always measuring everything around them out of habit. When Maya arrived on her first shift, carrying her clipboard and wearing a smile she hoped looked more confident than she felt, the men in those beds looked at her the way people look at something that does not quite belong. Some of them looked away immediately. Others watched her longer, with expressions that did not change. The most senior patient in the ward was Chief Petty Officer Dominic Harlan, a man the other patients called Dozer. He was 38 years old, broad across the shoulders, even lying flat in a hospital bed, with close-cropped gray at his temples and a face that looked like it had been through a great deal of weather. He had 3 combat deployments and 19 years of service behind him, and a shattered femur that had come from a difficult extraction during his last mission. He looked at Maya once when she entered, took in everything about her in about 2 seconds, and turned his face toward the window without a word. The whispers started that same afternoon. Maya heard them while she was updating chart notes at the nurses' station. She was not meant to hear, but the ward was not large, and she had always had sharp ears. How much experience does she even have? She looks like she just finished school. I give her 2 weeks before she transfers out. She kept her eyes on the chart. She kept writing. That night, riding the bus back to her apartment, she thought about her father, and the way he used to say that the only answer to people who doubt you is the work itself. So she went home, slept 4 hours, came back the next morning, and worked. A few days later, a ranger named Sergeant Brett Caldwell filed a written complaint with the ward supervisor. He did not cite any specific mistake Maya had made. He had not observed her do anything wrong. He simply wrote that he did not believe she had the experience required for a ward of this complexity, and he wanted it noted officially. The supervisor called Maya in, showed her the complaint, and told her it would go in the file. Maya nodded, said she understood, and went back to her shift. She did not cry about it until she was alone in the supply room, and even then it was only for about 2 minutes. Then she washed her face and went back out. 3 weeks passed. Maya learned the ward the way she learned everything, through careful, patient attention. She learned which patients slept on their left side and which ones couldn't sleep at all. She learned that one of the rangers liked the blinds half open in the morning, but fully closed by afternoon. She learned that Dozer Harlan drank his water in small sips and always set the cup exactly 6 inches from the edge of the tray table. She learned these things not because anyone asked her to, but because noticing them was simply who she was. She also learned that Chief Harlan was not recovering the way he should be. It was not something she could point to on a chart right away. His vitals were acceptable. His wound looked as expected. The physicians who had checked him had cleared him without concern. He was scheduled for a mobility assessment the following morning, which would be the first step toward getting him back on his feet. But Maya was doing her 2 o'clock medication round on a quiet Tuesday night when she stopped beside his bed, and something made her slow down. It was nothing dramatic. It was the way his jaw was set, a tightness in the muscle below his ear that had not been there the night before. It was a faint warmth rising from the skin near his wound site, maybe 2 degrees above what she had noted the previous evening. It was the way his hand, when she handed him a cup of water, trembled for just a fraction of a second before he got it under control. Most people would not have noticed any of that. Maya noticed all of it. She stood quietly for a moment, running through everything she had observed over the past 3 days. Small things, things that were easy to dismiss individually, but together they added up to something she could not ignore. She paged the orthopedic specialist, Dr. Elaine Marsh, at 2:47 in the morning. When the doctor answered, her voice carried the slight edge of someone pulled from sleep, and Maya knew she had only a narrow window to say exactly the right things. She did not rush. She did not apologize for calling. She simply listed every observation she had made, in order, in plain and precise language, without exaggerating a single detail. Dr. Marsh ordered an emergency scan at 3:15. By 4 in the morning, Dozer Harlan was being taken into surgery. The infection inside the bone had progressed further than anyone had detected. The operating doctor told the night staff afterward that they had caught it with very little time to spare. Another half a day, possibly less, and the outcome would have been far worse. They might have lost the leg. They might have lost more than that. When Harlan came back from surgery the next afternoon, he was groggy and quiet. He did not look at Maya when she checked his lines. He did not say anything. She did not expect him to. She updated his chart, checked his temperature, straightened his blanket, and moved to the next bed. But something in Ward 7B had shifted. The men in those beds had seen many things in their careers. They were trained to pay attention to everything around them, and they had been paying attention to Maya for 3 weeks. They had watched her come in every day without complaint. They had watched her sit with the young ranger who couldn't sleep, not pushing him to talk, just staying nearby, present and quiet, until he finally did. They had watched her remember small details about every single one of them without being reminded, and now they had watched her catch something in the middle of the night that every trained physician on rotation had missed. The complaints stopped. The whispers stopped. Sergeant Caldwell did not file anything else. In fact, he quietly submitted a request to withdraw the original complaint. The ward supervisor noted it without comment and updated the file. 2 more weeks passed. Maya kept working. She did not bring up what had happened with Harlan. She did not accept extra praise when Dr. Marsh mentioned her instincts in a staff meeting. She said only that she had been paying attention, which was her job. Then she went back to the ward. On a Friday morning in the 6th week of her assignment, Ward 7B was scheduled for standard morning rounds. There was nothing special on the calendar. The sun came through the tall windows at the end of the hall and laid long rectangles of pale light across the linoleum floor. Maya arrived at 7 o'clock for the shift handoff. She pushed open the door and stepped inside. Chief Petty Officer Dominic Harlan was standing. It was the first time he had stood since before his surgery, and it was costing him everything. He was upright beside his bed, both hands on a walker, his face set with the kind of focused effort that does not leave room for anything else. His knuckles were white, his breathing was slow and controlled. He looked at Maya when she came through the door. Then he let go of the walker with his right hand, brought it up slowly to the side of his brow, and held it there in a salute. Nobody had planned what happened next. There was no signal, no conversation, no agreement among the men in that room. They were people who had spent careers operating in fast and complex situations, and they did not need a plan for something they all felt at the same moment. From the bed to Harlan's left, a ranger pulled himself upright and raised his hand. From across the room, a Marine with his arm in a stabilizing brace lifted it anyway, the angle awkward and imperfect, and held it there. One by one, every man in Ward 7B who could physically raise a hand to his brow did so. The ones who couldn't sat up as straight as their bodies allowed and looked at her with an expression that said the same thing, as clearly as any hand raised in the air. Maya Reyes stood in the doorway and did not move. Later, one of the nurses who witnessed it said that Maya's expression did not change, that her chin stayed level, that she stood very still for a long moment, and then she blinked twice, fast, and walked into the room and picked up the first chart and started her shift. But her hands were shaking slightly as she reached for it. Just slightly. And the nurse noticed, because nurses always notice things like that. Maya Reyes went on to complete her rotation at Bethesda and later served as a flight nurse on 2 overseas deployments. She was decorated twice for her service. She never spoke publicly about the morning in Ward 7B. Chief Petty Officer Dominic Harlan wrote a formal letter of commendation and submitted it with her name on it to the Bureau of Naval Personnel. It was only the 3rd such letter he had written in 19 years of service. Sergeant Brett Caldwell was asked once in an interview what he regretted most from his time recovering at Bethesda. He was quiet for several seconds before he answered. "One thing," he said, "just the one. There is a photograph taken on a phone by a patient who was not supposed to have one, slightly blurry around the edges, and a little too bright in the middle. It shows a young woman standing in a doorway of a hospital ward, and behind her, every bed in the room holds a man with his hand raised in a salute. Maya Reyes has seen the photograph. She has never shared it anywhere. Some things do not need an audience to be real. Some honors are not meant for the world to weigh in on. They belong to the room where they happened, to the people who were present, and to the quiet and private understanding between those who gave and those who received." Maya understood that. She always had. It was, in the end, exactly the kind of person she had always been. And it turned out that was more than enough.